What's up, guys? Beast Coast, Arturo Sanchez, aka NYC Furby, here with another video. We're doing another tier maker list. This is the list of Street Fighter games. I was sent a tier, so I did not get to vet every game in this tier list as a heads up. The homies from Beast Coast sent me this list, so like there might be some games missing here, but we still have enough to cover. So, but still, we're gonna be talking about it, rating all the Street Fighters. What was good, guys? Hope you guys are enjoying your September.
Hey guys, EE here. I'm really excited to bring on this new product from one of our great sponsors on Beast Coast, Suma Forte. And with me in the chat, I actually have a couple homies who've actually tried this product out already, the Suma Tape, which is really good for their gaming needs.
And they have this transdermal mentholated CBD tape.
I've actually been really looking forward to trying this out. Dude, it does feel good though. I'm not gonna lie.
All right, guys. So there's definitely really a lot to cover here. So the first one we're gonna start off with is the original Street Fighter, the one that started it all. So Street Fighter 1, the game that came out in 1987. There was a 2-button version, I believe, published by Atari, and that had the push buttons, in which to get the higher strength by pushing the button even harder, right? So again, there's only 2 buttons. Second version of it, which was I think it was more widely known, since Capcom published that one. That was a 6-button one. So it's traditional 6-button layout that we all know and love in many different fighting games. Of course, especially Street Fighter. Yeah, it was the game that started it all. I remember playing it in 1987 when I was 5 years old. I needed a stool to sit on the machine and play. It was definitely cool. I enjoyed it, but I'd always ask people how do you do a Hadouken? How do you do an uppercut? And they would be like, yo, I can't tell you, God, right? And they'll just walk off into the distance. But little did we know, years later, we found out that Street Fighter 1 controls, they're very hard to pull off. Even today, I have trouble personally doing a fireball and uppercut in Street Fighter 1. But it is a series that started it all. But however, it's not necessarily the best game, so I'm gonna put it here. So I'm gonna put it here and see, just cause I don't think it's particularly great of a game. You have Ryu and Ken. You can only play 2 characters in the arcade version. Both fundamentally the same. The one-player stuff is cool, but again, the controls are kind of a big problem. Still, the game's iconic and it started everything, right? So I can't just discount it or whatever, right? So we're gonna put it. We're gonna put it there. C. So the next game right here, I'm looking. It's Street Fighter 2. The Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition is the game I see right here. Now again, the original Street Fighter 2 came out in 1991. Had 8 characters, right? Very iconic, very, very iconic game. Basically in the 90s, you went to any bodega, grocery shop, arcade, video rental spot, hotel, wherever. They had a Street Fighter 2 machine, and they had a Mortal Kombat machine, right? So that's the effect that it had. 7 setup, Street Fighter 2, no problem. People were just playing it everywhere. It definitely revitalized the arcade scene. People were eating up their quarters for it like crazy. Now the upgrade to this Champion Edition. The main differences were some balance tweaks, and they allowed you to play the boss characters. So you're able to play as Balrog, which is Vega, Sagat, M. Bison, Boxer. Right, so you're able to play those characters in Champion Edition, along with some balance tweaks and palette swaps. And also, you could play. This is the first time where you could play the same version of the same character. So in the original Street Fighter 2, you can never have a mirror match. There's always 1P versus 2P in different characters. This was the first game in which you could play mirror matches and allowed access to the boss characters. And once again, the upgrade was received very highly in the arcade. It was pretty well, thought out, upgrade by Capcom. It was also everywhere during the Street Fighter 2 era. So I'm gonna put this title. So Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition. It still does get played today to this day. Although it seems not too big. I'm gonna put it at a B. I think it's a solid title. It's definitely a solid title. All right, so the next game in the series, I'm going off the portraits here, so I might be guessing a little bit, but I'm pretty sure, I know most of the lore. This is Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting. Okay, so the little bit of the lore behind Hyper Fighting. Hyper Fighting was released after Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition. The lore is Champion Edition was so popular that a bunch of unauthorized ROMs and bootlegs were floating all over the arcades at the time. So there were a lot of versions called Rainbow Edition, and there were multiple versions of the hack since the game is so popular it got cloned to death, right? There are at least like 10 to 15 hacks in which you could jump all the way on the top of the screen and do lariats with Zangief, and Yoga Flame would come out, or you throw fireballs and 2 of them would come out at once, and you could have like 15 fireballs on the screen at once. Got throw like a billion sonic booms. You could jump all the way to the top of the stage, or they can't catch you and stuff. You could press start to switch characters. Like the walk speed was altered. It totally depended on the version you played, right? So Capcom, in order to counter the piracy that was happening, they released Street Fighter 2 Turbo, right? And basically the idea behind it was to speed up the game past Champion Edition and like add some balance tweaks to make it really competitive. What's also really notable about this title is it was the one that was designed by Capcom USA. James Goddard, DJ James Goddard, the guy that created DJ, worked on the balancing for this, right? Like this is pretty much his baby, right? And again, it was a counter to the pirate hacks that were floating around during Championship Edition. Now, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, it's a really solid title. I think it's a really solid title. You know, they gave Chun-Li a fireball. They sped up the game a lot. You know, there were additional balance tweaks. Championship Edition Bison was kind of busted, and Champion Edition you could do infinite cycle crushes back and forth. It was kind of silly. Turbo kind of removed some of that nonsense. Ryu is pretty strong in the game. Same for Blanca. Dhalsim got nerfed a little bit. You know, like it's just like some back and forth changes, but I really like the speed of the game. You know, I definitely think it's a step up above Champion Edition. And it's a pretty solid title. It's a precursor to Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. So I'm gonna put this at a solid A. I think this is like one of the best versions of Street Fighter 2 before Super Turbo. The next game in the series, I guess we're skipping over Super Street Fighter 2 here. We're gonna go straight to Super Turbo. So Super Turbo, the version that's played most competitively today in existence, came out in the mid 90s, like I think like 94, something like that, 94, 95, like around there. And it was on the CPS2 hardware, which was a total upgrade from the boards that Street Fighter 2 past franchises were on. It was on the Capcom Play System 1 board. This was on CPS2, and it is a very iconic system. CPS2 is known for having some of the best 2D sprites in the business. Colors, amazing. When Capcom released Super Street Fighter 2 originally, they added the new characters, like I mentioned. DJ James Goddard did work on DJ, and he added Cammy, T-Hawk, and Fei Long. And the graphics looked amazing, but the speed was really slow. The speed was like really, really slow. If you went from Street Fighter 2 Turbo to Super Street Fighter 2, people would be complaining about the speed. Hardcore. They're like, it looks pretty, but it's so slow, right? So Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, it was kind of like a call to these, right? It was a call to these complaints. They sped up the speed. They added multiple speeds, you know, depending on which version you were playing. Akuma was a playable character in this. You were able to play the old version of the characters. Now, when I say old, I mean you could pick the Super Street Fighter 2 versions of the characters, right? It was also like one of the first Street Fighter games to have a super meter, right? So you had a super as well, which really mixed things up. So you had the 16 characters plus Akuma, plus you could pick the old versions of the 12 characters, right? Like that were not in Super Street Fighter 2. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. You could pick old versions of all the characters, so all 16. So it's 16 by 16, right? So you get a lot of character variety, even though the characters they're mostly the same, but there's some move changes between Super Street Fighter 2 and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. You know, overall, like the game does have some issues. I'm not gonna act like it's perfect. Claw is definitely kind of a problem, but the game is really fun. You know, 20 years. It's been over 20 something years, right? And the game is still being played today in tournaments. When people pick what version of SF2 to play, they most likely always pick Super Turbo. There have been some other versions that have tried to rebalance it, HG Remix from David Serlin, and Street Fighter 2 Super Turbo New Legacy. You know, and shout out to those games, but you know, people always end up coming back to the original at the end of the day. You know, flaws and all. It is a pretty iconic game, and like I said, although it's not perfect, I think the impact of the game cannot be understated in Street Fighter lore. So I'm gonna put this as an S. So the next game I'm gonna pick, I'm gonna go with. So I'm sorry if I chronologically get out of order here. I'm gonna pick Street Fighter 3. So I'm gonna go with Street Fighter 3. So Street Fighter 3 New Generation You know, like it was the first in a Capcom series of titles for the Capcom Play System 3, right? The CPS 3 was a departure what the CPS 2 did. Basically, the CPS 3, it was an arcade board, but it had a CD-ROM unit, right, to store the graphics and stuff, right? It had amazing sprite effects, amazing graphics, right? But it required a CD board, required a security cartridge. You needed all these custom sims, right? So it was pretty damn expensive, right? The game looked beautiful, but it was really expensive. It was a complete departure from the Street Fighter 2 series, right? So here's a couple of ways that was a departure. Ryu and Ken were the only returning Street Fighter 2 characters in the game, right? The game was definitely slower than Super Turbo. The game had parries. Fireballs were kind of devalued a bit, right? And like there were no throw breaks. You had access to 3 supers, right? But again, like the game looked visually amazing, right? But when it came out, due to the high cost of it, you know, being on CD-ROM and everything, and all these custom chips, right? And the fact that there were not a lot of Street Fighter 2 characters in there, of course, like it ended up creating a new crowd. It was kind of critically panned on release. You know, people didn't really like it, the Street Fighter 3 series at first, because of the things I mentioned. But it is a very important iteration in the series. Like, you know, once again, CPS 3 only has like 5 to 6 titles, right? And Street Fighter 3 New Generation is one of them. And it is definitely a departure from the series, but it is kind of flawed. I think with New Generation, because like I said, like it had so many problems. Like after when I remember, now Third Strike is obviously very popular, but when Street Fighter 3 came out, the series kind of like dipped for a bit. Like, you know, it was like a little bit of a downturn where it was only the hardcores. So I think I had to put New Generation at like C. You know, it was definitely like a blow up. It was definitely a blow up kind of. All right. So next game in the series, we're gonna go to Street Fighter 3 Second Impact, right? So Street Fighter 3 Second Impact, it was a definite upgrade from Street Fighter 3 New Generation, right? You know, I think this came out 1 year after the release of Street Fighter 3. I think Street Fighter 3 came out in 96, 97, and Second Impact came out in 90, 98, like 97, 98, you know, somewhere along those lines, right? All right, so once again, it was on the CPS 3 hardware, and you could tell that they were churning out games fast and furious, because in Street Fighter 3 New Generation, there's a way to unlock the hidden Hugo sprite that is unfinished and not even in the game unless you use like a hack. So Second Impact expanded on the New Generation ideas, right? They actually finished Hugo. They added Urien. They added Akuma, and like a bunch of characters to make it cool. Like, there's definitely like an upgrade on the Street Fighter 3. Had better graphics, had better gameplay, had more characters. There were a lot of balance tweaks. Akuma was actually a playable character in the game, but like he was kind of broken though. Ibuki was very strong. They adjusted the parry system a lot, you know, to make it so that if you air parry and ground parry, like, you know, it definitely works like a lot more properly. There are throw breaks in the game. For the first time. You know, everybody has their unique super bars. Super bars were adjusted a bit. It's basically like I think what Street Fighter 3 New Generation should have been. And again, you know, it's not necessarily a franchise that's for everybody, but I do respect Second Impact, mostly because when I came up in the FGC, like my first arcade, like I was really going hardcore in, was at Chinatown Fair. At the time, they had Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and Street Fighter 3 Second Impact. And I was like this wall of Chinese people, like row to row, like 50 people, just all playing Second Impact, like crazy. And they're all crazy good, right? And the game is really fast paced at a high level. And I really like it a lot, even though the game is kind of fundamentally flawed. The tiers, but I do love seeing some Akuma and Ibuki brokenness and Sean, right? The game is definitely fun to watch, and like, yeah, I wish more people watched it. I think I'm gonna be doing a Second Impact tournament, and on NYC Furby this weekend actually. So I think as far as where this goes, this has to be at a B. I think it's a solid title. All right, so now Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, right? So the final version of the Street Fighter 3 series came out in 1999. Once again, on the CPS3 hardware. And once again, Capcom's really getting into their groove here. Like, you know, like they really mastered 2D art to perfection in that game. That game looks beautiful, bro. Like, wow. Like, they added Chun-Li to the game. They added Q. They added Q, Makoto, like Remy. You know, a bunch of new characters in the game. And like, it was all dope. You know, it was a revision of Second Impact that, like, kind of like the final version of Third Strike. Like, you know, in this game, has been played the longest. It's amazing. It has the most competitive history in all the Street Fighter 3 titles, and the lore still goes on 21 years later. You know, we just finished Jazzy Circuit, right? So shouts to the Jazzy Circuit. You know, it's a grassroots third strike league that we've been putting on for the last 2 years. Season 2 finals just ended, and 5-star actually beat Issei. You can check out all the VODs for that at FGC Sabin on YouTube. Shameless plug. But anyway, third strike, iconic game now. But once again, you know, this is during the hardcore era, the dark days, so to speak. Only the hardcore guys were playing. So when it came out, it was commercially panned. Like, it's kind of shit on too. Unless you were in the arcades and it was fire. But you know, of course, 20 years later, you know, after all these tournaments and all the lore and the legacy, it is one of the most iconic Street Fighter titles of all time, right? Like, it's definitely like sick. So Street Fighter 3, Third Strike, I gotta put it in S tier. It's S tier game for sure. Much love to Third Strike, and we hope Jazzy Season 3 is fire. So Street Fighter Alpha 1, right? Street Fighter Alpha 1 was a departure from the Street Fighter 2 series. It was kind of like a spin-off of Street Fighter 2. More anime style, you know. Again, this was done on the CPS2 hardware. Interesting thing to note, like Street Fighter Alpha is the only Street Fighter game that was done both on CPS1 and CPS2. The CPS1 version of Street Fighter Alpha was done on a system called CPS Changer in Japan, which is a console on CPS1 that's not really easy to get, right? So it's missing some sound effects and stuff, but like the actual full game is fun. It's functionally there. Moved over to CPS2, but you can tell obviously the game was rushed. A lot of the characters in Street Fighter Alpha 1 share the same background. Like I think Ryu and Guy definitely share the same background in the game, as well as other characters. The roster is definitely kind of small. Does have Akuma though, right? But you can tell like the game is definitely unfinished, right? Like it definitely rushed this out the door, right? The game does have an auto block system, so you can actually auto block 6 times in a row and do 2-button supers as like an easy mode type of thing. It does have chain combos, right? It does have chain combos, and it's the introduction of the alpha counter where you block a move, and then you can actually counter by spending 1 bar and then actually knock them down and stuff, right? So I had a lot of interesting ideas here, although like, you know, again, you know, kind of flawed title, but you know, like it is what it is. They upgraded it in future versions. So I'm gonna put Alpha 1 at a C. You know, it's definitely kind of a blow up, right? You know, the first version of the franchise is always a blow up, right? All right, so Alpha 2, fire. Like, you know, this is definitely like the most popular. There's definitely like the most popular Street Fighter Alpha title, right? You know, and there's lots of reasons why. You know, it's easy to get into. The graphics and the music are amazing. It has like a large character roster. There's even like some secret characters like Evil Ryu and Dark Sakura and stuff like that. You can pick hidden stages. Like, for example, if you press start over Sagat, you can you can pick like the anime stage from Street Fighter 2, the animated movie. The first scene where Ryu and Sagat are fighting like in the open field. It's actually like a hidden stage in Street Fighter Alpha 2. This game is kind of iconic. The thing that defines this game the most is custom combos. So custom combos in the game, you press multiple buttons to activate. You become invincible. You flash, you become invincible, and you can just chain combo to win, right? Does a lot of damage. Definitely defines the game, as well as alpha counter. But again, you know, this game is loved. This game is loved these days. Alpha 2, people love it. I'm gonna put it in A+. I'm gonna put it in A. I think it's a solid title. I think it's a very solid title. All right, so the next one. So I'm gonna put something in the irrelevant category, and that is Street Fighter 2010. So Street Fighter 2010 was a title on the NES done by Capcom. It's a side-scrolling Street Fighter with Ken in it. I haven't played it through myself. You know, I can't really consider it like a Street Fighter game because like it's a 2D side-scroller, not like a 1v1 fighting game. So I'm gonna put it here in the irrelevant category just to make it easy. But you know, Street Fighter 2010, you know, definitely like an enjoyable platformer. It's not like it's the worst game or anything. But yeah, check it out on the Nintendo Entertainment System. You know, if you want to. So the next game in the franchise is Street Fighter Alpha 3. This game is tragically misunderstood. You know, so to put into perspective here, Street Fighter Alpha 3 sold damn well. It came out on multiple systems. So obviously arcade first, came out on PlayStation 1, came out on Saturn, came out on Dreamcast, came out on like a PSP, something like that. Like it had Ingrid or something like that. Like Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max, right? Like she's one of the hidden Capcom Fighting Evolution characters, right? So the game definitely was very popular. Like the game got revised several times, even in the arcades, got revised 2 to 3 times. So this game, like it tries to like combine elements of a lot of the different Street Fighter games. You have 3 different modes to pick in Street Fighter Alpha 3. You have Xism, which is kind of like a classic Super Turbo style, in which you have like one bar. You have like one super bar. You have like one big ass guard bar, because the game does have a guard mechanic. You have no access to alpha counters, and you do a lot of damage, but you take a lot of damage. Then there is Aism, which tries to emulate the Street Fighter Alpha 2 style, meaning 3 bars. You have access to an alpha counter, and you can air block. Then we have Vism. So Vism is the custom combo mode from Street Fighter Alpha 2 again, but it's kind of on crack. Like it's definitely like the most powerful ism in the game. Has access to like a lot of actually true infinites and like really messed up juggle situation, right? So like it's definitely like the most powerful, right? There are also other isms like noism. So noism means you have no guard bar, no super, right? You don't have anything except yourself. It's just classic Street Fighter 2 style. And there are also like some other variety isms like M-ism and L-ism, but like I don't think they're really allowed in tournaments. There are some secret characters in the game, like a boxer. Boxers in the game. We have the Junie and Julie twins, which are basically like the precursor to the Capri in Ultra Street Fighter 4, right? And like the console versions have a lot of characters. I think the console versions have like Fei Long and T-Hawk in the game, you know, depending on which version you're playing. And like the PSP version does have Ingrid, right? But the games are switched up from version to version. Arcade version. So there's 2 versions of the arcade version: Street Fighter Alpha 3, Street Fighter Alpha 3 Upper. TLDR. People like the broken version, right? People like the broken version. But this game has kind of seen a resurgence recently. It's a departure from the traditional Street Fighter series in the sense that it's a precursor to anime fighting games and Vampire Savior. Like, you know, you have multiple ways to recover in the air. You can do things like mash to reduce damage and stuff like that, right? Like and like there's all these cool mechanics in the game that definitely are not in other Street Fighter titles, but anime games, even Vampire Savior uses some of these mechanics. So this game is really underrated. Like I think I'm biased here, but screw it, it's my video. We're putting it at an S. I love it. I love me some Alpha 3. Like I think it's an amazing game, and it's really popular when it came out. People kind of cry about it now because they're like, oh, it's too hard to play. I can't do custom combos and stuff. But nah, you can actually play it. You just gotta free your mind from the Alpha 2 mindset. Alpha 2 is also a great game. But you know, over here at Beast Coast, you love me some Alpha 3 over here. Like some of my favorite games of all time. Okay, so now we've covered. No, well, actually, there's one game that we missed in the Alpha series. So Street Fighter Alpha Anthology is here on the list, right? And it's not really like a traditional Street Fighter title. This is Alpha 1, Alpha 2, Alpha 3, all in a combination package for the PlayStation 2. It is kind of cool, but that's not really like the version that really steals the show. So there's a hidden mode in Street Fighter Alpha Anthology called Hyper Street Fighter Alpha, right? And it's crazy. It's like exactly what you think it is. It's it's a combination of all the alphas all in one game. And they even have like new isms. They have like a whole parry ism in the game, right? It's definitely like really sick. It is a little bit weird though, because like in the Hyper Street Fighter mode, since they all play the same, the Street Fighter Alpha characters, they have the unfortunate situation of having a guard meter when none of the other characters have guard meters in the game, right? So I think Alpha 3 versions of the characters are kind of not too good in Hyper Street Fighter Alpha. It's definitely something I want to see explored more in tournaments, especially since it was only available for the PlayStation 2. But yeah, not a lot of people have played this title. So I'm gonna put it at a B, just because Hyper Street Fighter Alpha is interesting, and you guys should all go check it out. We're gonna go over to Street Fighter EX, right? So Street Fighter EX, right? It was done by one of the founding fathers of Street Fighter 2, Akira Nishitani. He went off and founded his own company called Arika, right? But they secured the license with Capcom to actually make Street Fighter games on the platform. So it has a lot of the traditional Street Fighter characters, and there are also some Arika unique characters that are like not Street Fighter characters, but they're in the Street Fighter EX world, such as Hokuto, Shadow Geist, like Doctor in Dark, Cycloid Beta and Gamma, Garuda, Alan Schneider. I can go on and on. Blair Dane, but yeah, all these characters are cool. I liked it. I'm definitely a fan of Street Fighter EX, right? So with Street Fighter EX, there were actually 3 versions of the game. So first there was Street Fighter EX in the arcades, right? You had Street Fighter EX Plus, which I believe added Evil Ryu and Dark Hokuto, as well as some other characters like I think Akuma. I'm not too sure about Akuma, but I definitely played it in the arcade. Yeah, those characters definitely available, and it was kind of a balanced week. And then there is Street Fighter EX Plus Alpha, right, which is kind of the definitive version. It's on PlayStation 1. And the main difference is, I believe you get access to the Cycloid Beta and Gamma, which are kind of like clone characters that steal everybody's moves, like a generic like wire model and stuff. And you can play as Sakura on the PlayStation version, and it's a pretty arcade perfect port. It's on the same hardware in the arcade and the console. So I think it's a pretty good franchise. A lot of people gave it flack because at the time EX1 did not look as good as Tekken. I was gonna be real with you. Like, you put EX1 versus Tekken 2, Tekken 2 looked a billion times better than EX. But it was on a 2D plane. Just the fact that they made 3D models work in a 2D game on a 2D plane was pretty impressive. I'm really a fan of the Street Fighter EX series. I kind of love it here. So I'm gonna put EX. Even though the EX Plus Alpha is the best version of it, I'm gonna put it at a B. I think it's solid. I think the EX series is solid, right? EX2 is a continuation of this, right? So EX2, way better graphics. I think it's done like on the Sony ZN2 board. I actually personally own a Street Fighter EX2 Plus board, right? So there were 2 versions of Street Fighter EX2. There was Street Fighter EX2 and Street Fighter EX2 Plus. Street Fighter EX2 definitely had like some new characters to the franchise. They added Hayate, who's like a sword type character, right? And I think in the arcade version, he was only playable in Street Fighter EX2. Now there was a tuned version called Street Fighter EX2 Plus, which basically like obviously it's the balance patch. They kind of added some stuff, did like some balance tweaks, etc. I think it's a great game though. EX2 does have the Excel system, which is what it's known for. So the Excel system is kind of like a custom combo, like Street Fighter Alpha series. Press 2 buttons and you do your combo, and then you blow them up. Street Fighter EX series in general was known for blinking super into super. So you could do level 1, it's level 1, it's level 1, or you could do like a level 3. Then at Street Fighter EX2, you could do an Excel combo, activate, do like a long custom combo into another Excel combo, right? Into like a super or something like that. So it did do a lot of damage, but the combos were hard to do again. But anyway, me personally, I have a very good experience with the Street Fighter EX series, and I really like it a lot, right? I think EX2 Plus is definitely a game you should check out. So EX2 Plus was available on PlayStation 1, but the arcade version, I think personally, is a standard, right? Although you only play it at emulators these days, so much want to buy an arcade board. Thankfully, I'm blessed. I have one, so I'm gonna put EX2 Plus at a solid A. I think EX2 Plus is a very solid game. All right, so Street Fighter EX3. Street Fighter EX3. So I'll just be straight up. I don't think it's as good as Street Fighter EX1 or 2. It does have some merits though. So Street Fighter EX3, it was one of the launch titles on the PlayStation 2, right? So it was one of the earliest titles you could get for that system. PlayStation 2, we know, is an iconic system, right? So once again, Arika, continuing the franchise, right? And the main difference is in this game from Street Fighter EX2, they remove custom combos completely, right? Now what they have are called momentary cancels, right? So basically what that means is, say for example, you're doing a fireball. There's a couple of frames window you have to cancel the fireball into another special move, right? So you can do fireball into uppercut, for example, right? So the momentary cancels definitely changed the game. There's no longer any custom combos. the game does have a tag mode, right? And like, yes, it works. So it's even more strong. It's even a lot stronger than how it is in versus games, in my opinion, because you can basically do a safe string into a tag, and then your other character comes in and you continue the pressure. The other character can get punished, but it's definitely kind of a little bit broken. With the PS2 version, the Japanese version was so rushed, it did have a lot of slowdown issues, right? By the time it came out in the US release, it was cleaned up, so not a lot of consumers got to see that, right? But me personally, like the game is fun, but I think the tag combos are kind of a little silly because like you kind of keep them in like crazy pressure. The momentary cancels are like a bit too good. From what I remember, like I don't think like it had any new characters to the franchise, but they did have a character called Ace. Now Ace is kind of like your create a custom character. Like, you know, you see him a lot in Soul Calibur, where you can pretty much equip him with like multiple moves. So it's definitely like a bit broken. But like it's not. I'm not gonna say it's like a bad game. I just prefer EX2 to EX3. Like, you know, EX3 does have a lot of problems. I feel like it was kind of rushed. But again, the tag system is fun, and the momentary cancels are cool, and it is cool to see the game at high level play. Right? I'm not gonna act like it's like bad or anything. I will probably put this game at a B. Can't put it like at an A. Like, I'll put it at a B because like it definitely has some issues. I see we have Hyper Street Fighter 2 here on the list over on the left. So Hyper Street Fighter 2, Hyper Street Fighter 2 is a it's considered to be like, you know, one of the final versions of Street Fighter 2. This was like one of the last games on CPS2 hardware. So for that reason alone, like, you know, it does have like some relevance, right? And it's a combination of all the Street Fighter 2 games, right? So Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, all in the same game, right? All in the same game. It means glitches and bugs and all, like they're all in there, right? So it's basically like a dream match for all the versions of the characters in the game, right? So obviously in a game like that, you know, like it's definitely fun, you know, but you know, obviously some of the characters are a bit more broken than others. Championship edition, like Bison was really strong in that game, and we kind of got to see Blocks on Infinites. Yeah, Championship Edition characters are really strong in general. Super Turbo characters were okay, but it's like, you know, like you kind of tended to play the older versions of the characters sometimes. You play the Super Turbo characters just for the throw breaks and stuff, but then you couldn't like break throws from the older characters, right? So it was definitely like a bit weird. It's not really played like too much these days, although like, you know, there are tournaments that pop up from time to time. You know, so it definitely has some issues, but it is notable, you know, for being like one of the last versions on CPS2 hardware. Yeah, like I'm talking good about the game, but you know, in my heart, like, you know, I'm kind of put it at a C over here. You know, although despite all the good things I mentioned, you know, it's not really competitively played today. It does have a lot of flaws though. But you know, shout out to Capcom for doing that on CPS2 hardware. We do have like some Marvel games in here, you know, just because like it has Street Fighter in the title, right? But yeah, so it's not technically Street Fighter. You know, some people will say this is versus, but you know, I'll cover it for the sake of the video. So we do have X-Men versus Street Fighter, right? X-Men versus Street Fighter is a godlike game. That is a godlike game, right? Because, okay, so here's the lore. X-Men Chosen the Atom came out in '94, right? It had all Marvel characters, right? Animation's fire, everything fire, graphics fire. Capcom killed it with that game. And they added Akuma. You read about it in the magazines, you're like, yo, I can play Akuma, yo! What are they gonna make? When are they gonna make Marvel vs. Street Fighter, X-Men vs. Street Fighter? Please make it happen, Capcom. And sure enough, they answered the call. Oh man, I can hear like that intro just ringing in my head. This is X-Men versus Street Fighter. Oh man, this game is so good. It's so broken, but it's Marvel, baby.
Push the 10. Marvel, baby. 400. Marvel, baby.
East Coast, baby. Philly, where you at?
Now, as far as the game goes, the game did get revised 3 times. Version 2, to my understanding, is the one that's still played in tournaments today. Version 3 kind of tried to tone down some of the brokenness, but you can only tone down brokenness in Marvel so much, right? This game, this game is sick. I want to see more tournaments of this game, and I really respect the hell out of this franchise. So it is one of the first games to have push block, right? One of the first games to have push block. one of the first games to be like a tag team scenario. You had alpha counters, like you had canceling supers into supers, you had infinites, you had all like the crazy shit that like Marvel is known for, right? X-Men vs Street Fighter is an amazing game, as broken as it is. I love every second of it because it's the fun type of broken, right? So I'm gonna put this game. I'm gonna put this game in an A. I think the game's very solid. Like X-Men vs Street Fighter, I really like X-Men vs Street Fighter. All right, so I like Marvel vs Street Fighter even more, but you know, I'm a little bit biased here, right? So Marvel vs Street Fighter was kind of like a toned down version of X-Men vs Street Fighter in terms of the infinites and what you could do and like the combo routes. It was definitely really toned down for X-Men vs Street Fighter. Like maybe they thought like it was like a bit too broken, right? But like, it turns out like people they didn't really like receive it too well because of that. It's like they want their Marvel craziness. Me personally, I enjoyed the game. I love playing Omega Red in Marvel vs Street Fighter. Definitely a top tier character. Wolverine is also pretty broken. He can mash strongs and get meter and then do Berserker Rage and then just throw you, and it's really cheap, right? It's really cheap. Does have a lot of characters. I'm really a fan of the announcer in the game, but again, the combo system is kind of limited. One of the interesting things about the Japanese and US versions are the Japanese version has a hidden character that's not available in America. And it's called Norimaru, who is a licensed character, right? Like a licensed Japanese character, right? Has like his own moveset. Couldn't play him in the US version, but I don't really think he's any good per se. Although like the sprite is kind of funny, right? But yeah, again, so based off the fact that I said it's a toned down version of X-Men vs Street Fighter, I can't necessarily. It's not C tier, right? Because like it's not bad. Like it's not like A tier. So I'll probably put it in B. Put this in B. We are getting out to the modern titles right now, right? So we're gonna start with Vanilla Street Fighter 4. This game revitalized the genre, right? Like, you know, Street Fighter was dead for so long after Third Strike, right? Like it's had like a dark days, like Third Strike and Capcom vs SNK 2, right? So like from 2001 on, right? You know, after that game came out, it was nothing, right? There was nothing for like 8 years. Like, you know, it was really bad. I was playing other games. I was playing Tekken 5 DR, and Kind of Heart. There were no games for years. And Street Fighter 5 comes out, blows it up, right? Blows it up again. Like all of a sudden, I was in Japan at the time because I was playing like hardcore. I won that advantage over the US, right? I was living in Japan for a few months, right? Had like cabinets everywhere. It was popping. My local arcade, Chinatown Fair, like they had one cabinet. The board was really expensive, by the way. I think it was like $16,000 just for the 2-player PCB, and you needed one PCB for one player, right? The word was game was $1 play. You had to put your name on a wait list, and like it was only like a 6-game cap. That's how popular it was, and there were lines outside the arcade. This game was godlike, like when it came out, flaws and all. Like definitely revitalized the genre. The console version had several more characters, like you play like a Seth, Gen, Rose, Cammy, a couple of others, right? But yeah, like Street Fighter 4, definitely well received, right? Definitely well received title, right? Definitely revitalized the genre. I'm gonna put it at a. I'm gonna put it at an A. Put it at an A. So this version right here is Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, but I'm just gonna say, you know, for the sake of the video, let's do the most relevant version. Let's just say this is Ultra Street Fighter 4, even though it's Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition. So basically, success of Street Fighter 4 meant the game spawned several upgrades. Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 4. So Super Street Fighter 4 added like a bunch of characters, added double ultra, stuff like that. Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition was further balance tweaks, and they added Yin and Yang into the game, which is really cool, except they were really freaking broken. So much that Capcom had to release AE 2012, which fixed the brokenness, but it was still like a little bit crazy, right? It was still a little bit crazy. Then we got Ultra Street Fighter 4, which pretty much has everything. It has the Edition Select from Hyper Street Fighter 2. It has Ultra 1, Ultra 2, and then Variable Ultra, in which you have access to both Ultras. Like, you know, it added characters like Elena, Hugo, Poison, right, from Street Fighter Cross Tekken, right? There's definitely the definitive version of the game, right, of Street Fighter 4. The Capri was really cool as well. Like, the game had so much content. I feel like before Street Fighter 5 came out, it could have went on for it could have went on for a couple more years, right? They could have delayed Street Fighter 5 a couple more years. It would have been perfectly fine playing Ultra Street Fighter 4. Since this is the most relevant title in the Street Fighter 4 franchise and one that's still, you know, like seen, like, you know, pretty much it's revered today. People still talk about, oh man, I missed Ultra Street Fighter 4 days. I gotta put it in S. I think Ultra Street Fighter. I think Ultra Street Fighter 4 is S. Oh yeah, so I see Super Street Fighter 2 here in this list. Didn't mention it before. You know, it's a slowed down version of Street Fighter 2 Turbo. It's before Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. First game on the CPS2, but it's kind of too slow compared to Super Turbo. Really, really slow. I'm definitely like a bit broken. I'm gonna put it in. I'm gonna put it in C. You know, it's a very flawed version of the game, but it is the first revision on the CPS2, right? So it's not like total trash, but yeah, it does have issues. That being said, check out all the games. Like, you know, you might have fun with them. This version of Street Fighter 2, I think this is the Nintendo Switch version, Ultra Street Fighter 2, right? Nobody really plays in tournaments, pretty much. You know, it's cool. It's on the Switch and everything. Like, it does have Violent Ken and Evil Ryu. It's like a rebalance. It's like a rebalance of Street Fighter 2, but like nobody really plays in the hardcore scene. The netcode's kind of bad. Like, it does look cool. I like the fact that it's on Switch and it's pretty cheap. But you know, everybody keeps asking like when Super Turbo. There'll still be a tournament for it someday, I guess. Like, I did one tournament for the game. Like, nobody really took it like too serious, right? But you know, I do appreciate the fact whenever they bring out a new Street Fighter 2 title. The problem with the Street Fighter 2 titles that come out that are new is, to my understanding, Capcom has lost the source code for Street Fighter 2. So I believe that any version that is done today is done off the Dreamcast code, right? The Dreamcast 4 Super Turbo is pretty good, actually, right? But yeah, I believe Capcom does not have the source code, so it's kind of a pity. It's like we'll never have the source code to make a true successor of Street Fighter 2 without doing a ROM hack. I gotta put, this is a Switch version right here. It's based on the graphic. I gotta put it at a C. It's definitely kind of flawed. Okay, so Street Fighter Cross Tekken. There's 2 games left: Street Fighter Cross Tekken and Street Fighter 5. Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Oh man, like this game had a lot of controversy back in the day. You know, it's definitely very misunderstood. So let me do a brief recap about it. So Street Fighter 4 coming out, blowing it up, right? Like, what does Capcom do? Street Fighter Cross Tekken. They have a licensing agreement with Namco, right? So Namco's supposed to make Tekken Cross Street Fighter. What's still not done yet to this day. And then Capcom's supposed to make their version called Street Fighter Cross Tekken. So Street Fighter Cross Tekken, oh man, this had an amazing roster. The roster was like huge. It's like 40, 50 something characters or something. Like, it's ridiculous, right? How big the roster is, right? The problem with the game was that they balanced it around the gem system, right? Now the gem system, it's a loadout that you can pick that gives you different offensive and defensive attributes, right? You can mix and match them, right? So so there was like some standard loadouts, and there were like some really, really crazy loadouts that you could purchase via DLC that were kind of broken. One example is, I have like an old video on YouTube somewhere, right, where like somebody is using the auto block gem, right, and I think it's like a DLC gem loadout, right, and the auto block gem basically means you can walk at an opponent and you will auto parry and keep gaining meter the whole time just by walking at them. So you can walk at them and they're just auto parrying, getting tons of meter, and you're like, what the hell is going on, man? Right? The game was also known for its time overs, you know, like especially the first version of the game. Definitely kind of flawed. Like, you had a cross assault mechanic, which was like you would control both characters at once to try to kill them, right? There was a Pandora's mode where you do like mad damage, but then you die in 10 seconds. But again, like the game was marred by, again, DLC. It was data mined that half the characters were behind DLC, right? And yeah, like, you know, not go over well with the public, you know, having to pay for like basically half the class, and people did not like the gem loadouts, right? That being said, Capcom did spend a lot of marketing on this game. There was like a whole league. There was like a whole leagues like around this game. You know, I played some of the early tournaments. There was also the infamous Cross Assault, streamed by Team Spooky. I played winner. That was back when guys like Maximilian had like only 70k subs and stuff. You know, that was where I first met him and stuff. It was like a reality show about the game. It's definitely like iconic things you can read about it. It was a bit of a blow up, right? I'm not gonna lie. Like, the game was a bit of a blow up, but I loved it. Like, I had a lot of fun with it. They released a patch for it, Street Fighter Cross Tekken version 2012, which did things like standardized gem loadouts. So you no longer had any of those crazy loadouts. You had tournament presets that you would use, right? And it fixed like a lot of the slowdown problems, right? So one of the reasons one of the reasons people complained about the game was that it was too hard to like kill 2 opponents. It would end in time over. Now if you tag out, you can take all their great damage away. You can really hurt them. So like so damage is there. You can punish tag outs a lot better in the game. It was kind of too little too late for some people, but I really enjoy Street Fighter Cross Tekken. And like to this day, I think like to this day there was a period in my life where I really loved Cross Tekken more than Street Fighter 4. But unfortunately it got a bad rap upon release and never kind of really recovered. But the hardcore players loved it. This game I gotta put at A. I think it's a very solid game that a lot of people should check out. And like I do a lot of Cross Tekken tournaments anyway. So yeah, shout out to Street Fighter Cross Tekken community and the homie Psycho Blue. I think it's great. I think it's a great franchise. Now we're down to the last one, Street Fighter 5. Oh man, this is a game where this is a game where it's like it's so polarizing, right? We're already up to the season 5.5 of the game. Game came out in 2016, right? And like I'm gonna kind of abridge as much as I can. Game came out in 2016, right? There's a lot of expectations. The hype is at an all-time high. Still to this day, no game has matched the Street Fighter 5 entrance of 5,000 people in 2016. That's how much of a demand there was for the game out of Street Fighter 4. Capcom was just firing on all cylinders, right? And like they made a lot of promises which were not delivered upon release. So when the game first came out, there's a couple of betas for the game, and like at least 3 betas, right? Like people had trouble connecting to the servers, man. Like the servers were a big freaking problem, right? Like people could not connect to them throughout all 3 versions of the beta. The game did have rollback netcode, but it's poorly implemented, right? When the game came out, the connection problems were massive. Nobody could connect to servers at all. You couldn't get matches. There were no lobbies. People were kind of triggered. Season 1 had 8 frames of lag. Once again, 8 frames of lag. 8. Unreal Engine games tend to have like 4. Shout out to Guilty Gear for making it 2 on the PS4 Pro version. I play on PC Master Race, so I'm like at 1 frame. Shout out to high refresh rates and all that good stuff. But yeah, Street Fighter 5 Season 1 was a lag fest, right? Now, to Capcom's credit, they have been building up Capcom Pro Tour the whole time during the old Street Fighter 4 days. Shout out to Lord Haunts. Everybody was working for Capcom at the time, blowing it up. Seth Killian, Matt Deasy, all those guys, right? They set the groundwork during it, right? So it continued in the Street Fighter 5. They had the whole Capcom Pro Tour. Sony kind of money-hatted it. But the first version of the game was really rough. Like, it went from 5,000 to ended up losing a lot of players. But the game still had, like, a stable fan base because of Capcom Pro Tour was still going on. In Japan, like, obviously, like, they were going hard. And there's been multiple revisions of the game. Like, so, obviously, we're at Season 5.5. So there's been, like, a lot of back and forth to get to this place, It is definitely, like, a controversial title in the sense that, it is like the first game where Capcom is selling the game as a service, right? What I mean by that is like you keep paying for the upgrades like year after year after year. You do things that contribute to the Capcom Pro Tour and stuff, right? There's like a lot of merchandising and branding deals, things like that, right? But the game has stayed alive for a pretty long time. I got to give props to Capcom for supporting it like all this time. I'm gonna be honest with you, like, oh man. Like, I've had so many highs and lows in this game. Like, Season 1, I was like, nobody's killing my hype, right? And then by the end of it, I was just like, oh, God. Like, Capcom, please, right? And then, like, and then Season 2, as I iterated on, they added multiple V-triggers, multiple V-skills, right? But there were some busted things, like, along the way for sure, right? So, I wasn't really starting to feel the game until Season 5. So, Season 5 of the game is where I really enjoy it, right? They fixed like a lot of the problems. They fixed like a lot of latency problems. They finally got the balance in a good place. Like, a lot of the characters are like major threats now. And this is probably the best version of Dhalsim to date, right? And also I'm having a lot of fun playing on low latency setups, right? So we've managed to get like the lag like on PC down to like 2 frames or something. 2 frames, something like that. Maybe even 1 frame. I haven't exactly measured it, right? But basically, this version of Street Fighter 5 is the best yet. Right, especially with the DLC they've been doing. Akira, Oro are bangers. Rose wasn't that good upon first outage, but it's definitely gotten better. But this is a game where you definitely love it or hate it. Some people never gotten over all the blow-ups that happened in Season 1. Other people are playing it now, and they're still playing it. It still has a consistent base of players. Obviously, Strive took a little bit of the luster of that because of netcode. Netcode is this game's biggest problem, but like the fact that it has grassroots online events still, although it's region locked. Japan really supports the game hard, especially with Street Fighter League. The game is played in all regions, right? But I can't help but feel could have been didn't have to go like this, where they had to have like a redemption arc. Like you see a common theme here. I really want these games to be fire from the jump, but it doesn't always pan out that way, right? Like Street Fighter 5 again is a hit or miss. Some people really still have not come to terms with how the way the game is played now. Some people are still not feeling it today. People like me, I love it. There's a whole new group of players that love Street Fighter 5 that don't know any of the older titles, right? So there's merit to be had. As far as where I should put it on the list, like I can't really like, depending on who you ask. Like some people will put this like in C, some people will put it in B. I think the game is good. I think the game is good right now. I think Street Fighter 5 has never been better. I think like I really like the mechanic they've added to V-Shift. They added defensive options, and they're still tweaking the game today. So I got to give props to Capcom for that, and the Capcom Pro Tour and everything. But it has had its ups and downs as well. It's really hard. But looking at the list of B tier games, I don't think I can put this in a B. I think I'm gonna put Street Fighter 5 in a solid A. Like they have been grinding. Like again, this is a game where the developers have changed from year to year, right? Street Fighter 5, like Ono no longer works for Capcom. Like he's now like involved in Melty Blood. So it's totally new producers, and the season 5 producers, I gotta say overall, have done a bang up job in communicating about the game. For the most part, balance changes come a little bit earlier, but we see like a lot of behind the scenes things that are really freaking cool. I think the game has redeemed itself a lot, and I'm gonna put it at an A. And I'm gonna end this video right here. This is a really long video. Hopefully you guys learned something like about the lore, and I hope I was able to justify my opinions about all of these games. There are some notable titles that are not here, but it's cool. Really long video, really entertaining. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment, down below. This is Beast Coast Arturo Sanchez. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm out. Peace.